How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to find out how Norway became so ridiculously rich. That is right. That is the title of the video that we're going to be reacting to today. Geopolipedia is the name of the original channel. I don't know how to pronounce that, but hey, that's what it is. The links to the original video will be in the description section down below. And we're going to find out. Probably oil. I think oil has a lot to do with it. Not all of it, probably. I mean, there's going to be more to it than that, obviously, but I know they found oil.
During the late 18th century, Thomas Malthus, a prominent economist, visited Norway, which was then under Danish control. Despite the picturesque scenery, Norway was facing challenging weather conditions, making life difficult for its small population. Surviving on meager resources from small farms and fishing in the sea was a way of life, with harsh winters casting near darkness for half a year. Agricultural land was scarce, and the mountainous terrain made travel difficult. Remote and isolated towns with a poorly educated populace were the norm. The days of Viking conquest were long gone, leaving Norway without wealth or resources. Norway's situation further deteriorated in the following decades due to wars, blockades, and embargoes.
So the Viking conquest. So is that how Norway had, is that how Norway was getting by prior to the oil thing? Like back in the day, the Vikings would just go take what they wanted. I mean, that's a good method, I guess.
The economy was in ruin, and the famine spread across the land. As a result, Norway remained undeveloped and unimportant in many ways. Today, Norway stands as the second wealthiest country on Earth, excluding micronations. It's also among the happiest, the seventh healthiest, and the most democratic nation worldwide. Norway's prosperity is evident in almost every metric that measures the well-being of a nation, with every citizen technically being a quarter millionaire.
How does that work, though? Every citizen's a quarter millionaire?
However, the question remains, how did Norway achieve such immense wealth while other nations struggled and failed? Many countries have attempted to replicate Norway's success, only to end up poorer than before. It begs the question of whether Norway's economy is too good to be true. Nonetheless, Norway's remarkable rise to prosperity has been a source of fascination and admiration for many around the world. But how did a country that was once impoverished and undeveloped manage to become one of the wealthiest and most successful nations on Earth? The world's largest oil reserves are found in a group of countries plagued by economic and social problems. These nations make up just 7.9% of the world's GDP, despite accounting for 84.9% of the remaining oil supply. Venezuela, with almost a fifth of the total oil supply, is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE are all known for their human rights abuses and extreme inequality. Russia has been in decline for decades, while Libya has been in a state of anarchy since the overthrow of Gaddafi in 2011. This is what economists refer to as the oil curse, or the Dutch disease.
Or the Dutch disease, what does that mean?
Despite the world's inevitable shift towards cleaner energy resources, oil and gas still accounts for 27% of all energy consumption. One might think that having vast amounts of oil would be a blessing for a country's economy.
But it's not always like that. Just like the country, like all these people that make all this money off coffee, well, where do they get the coffee from? They get it from these places that don't benefit from it at all.
Especially as oil prices soar. However, the problem with oil is that it can be like winning the lottery. Overnight, nations can find themselves flooded with money. They use the sudden wealth to cut taxes and increase spending. But the oil industry can quickly overshadow all other industries, leading to a lack of economic diversification. As more oil is exported, the demand for the local currency increases, boosting citizens' buying power abroad but also crippling domestic manufacturing. Politicians promise to spend more to get elected, and dictators do the same to remain in power, choosing to spend today instead of saving for tomorrow. Corruption becomes rampant, and wealth is funneled to a select few, while the average citizen struggles to make ends meet. However, there is one extraordinary exception to the oil curse, and that is Norway. Despite being a small oil-exporting nation, Norway's economy has not been destroyed by the oil curse.
As of yet. It's hard to tell what the future has in store. Just saying.
Norway has managed to avoid the pitfalls of other oil-rich countries, and its citizens enjoy high standards of living and social welfare benefits. So what makes Norway fundamentally different from Libya, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and all other small oil-exporting nations?
Well, we're going to find out. I know PewDiePie, he's Swedish, and I was watching one of his videos, and he's got like he mentioned how like Sweden and Norway have like a rivalry, kind of. I guess they were at war for ever, off and on throughout history and stuff. But yeah, he mentioned something about the oil in one of his videos, actually.
About a century after Malthus's visit, Norway gained its independence from Sweden. But it remained an uneducated and impoverished country that relied on shipping raw resources such as timber, fish, and minerals. However, the country had some advantages, such as a strong parliamentary system, universal suffrage, and workers' rights that allowed for social reforms.
Okay.
Additionally, Norway built the world's fourth largest merchant fleet and gained valuable expertise in shipping, trade, and technology. Despite this progress, almost 3/4 of the country's hydropower was owned by foreign companies, which prompted the government to pass a bill limiting foreign ownership and monopolization attempts.
Okay.
New tech.
So, sure, they had the hydroelectric dams, but they weren't benefiting from it because it was foreign owners. Okay.
Technologies such as railways, roads, and communication methods greatly reduced Norway's disadvantage against its European neighbors and kickstarted rapid economic growth and industrialization. However, Norway's strong ties to welfare, education, and public industry distinguished it from its peers and would have served the country well in the future. During the early 20th century, Norway was impacted by the global economic and geopolitical forces and was invaded and occupied by Germany during World War II. After the war, Norway joined international organizations and was a large recipient of aid under the United States Marshall Plan. The Labour Party established strict social democratic rule with a large emphasis on the public sector and centralized planning, while allowing private competition to thrive. From 1945 to 1975, Norway experienced strong and reliable GDP growth of 3.3% per year, with high taxes and government spending on education shaping a capable workforce and a strong social safety net. Despite inflation remaining subdued and unemployment being almost non-existent, Norway was still far from being an economic powerhouse. In the 60s, Norway had caught up with other European nations and was no longer poor, but it was still an average performer. However, with the discovery of large natural gas resources in the Netherlands, speculation rose about the existence of oil in the North Sea. Norway asserted its claims over these waters, even though the government was initially skeptical about the idea of oil on the continental shelf.
Maybe that's what they were talking about, the Dutch disease, because the oil reserves in the Netherlands or whatever, which I've heard conflictingness on that. Some people don't like, I think it's Groningen, possibly, I don't know for sure. They're doing a lot of oil fracking, and a lot of the locals don't like that, actually.
The Norwegian government began to divide up and sell licenses for oil exploration, and Phillips Petroleum was one of the companies that started drilling. After numerous unsuccessful attempts, Phillips gave it one last try and drilled deeper, finally extracting the first drops of North Sea oil in 1969. In less than a decade, Norway was producing more oil per resident than any other country on the planet.
So because there was oil found in the Netherlands, they just assumed the North Sea probably has it, right? So why isn't there oil in like the UK then? That's right there by the North Sea, or like Denmark. Maybe Denmark does have oil. I don't know for sure, but
Norway's oil story had many similarities with other oil-rich nations, but it differed in incredibly different ways. While foreign companies rushed to profit from Venezuela's oil, returning little more than propping up its dictatorship, Norway tried another way. Its political power was already widely distributed, making it impossible for a single person or group to benefit at the expense of society.
Okay.
Therefore, Norway's government was not only able but restricted in making decisions based on the utility of the whole nation. Norway also knew that the oil curse had happened across the world, and oil luck did not mean permanent luck. The natural resources of Norway belonged not to foreign oil companies, but to the people of Norway. These companies could help explore, drill, and extract the oil, but a majority of profits earned were to be funneled to the state. At the same time, its public oil company Statoil was to study, replicate, and eventually surpass their expertise. Norway also knew that to maximize the opportunity, it needed to not only extract crude oil, but to create its own petroleum processing industry. That meant massive investment in infrastructure, careful central planning, and the generation of its own engineering workforce. Instead of slashing taxes and increasing social spending, Norway worried about the petroleum sector dominating the rest of the economy. So, it set a 90 million ton per year limit. Oil was not to replace the Norwegian economic engine, but was to become its turbocharger.
Okay.
However, Norway was not entirely sure how to best spend the money to benefit its people.
So if you cap it, then you can't have everybody like, okay, well, we're making money off oil, so I'm not going to go to work today, which would obviously collapse the economy. I think that's what they're getting at.
As the oil industry expanded and prices soared, more money came in than the government knew what to do with. In the early 80s, oil prices plummeted and a recession began, causing
Send some my way.
economic growth to stagnate for almost a decade. Despite not squandering its oil revenue, Norway needed to do something more. When an economy relies heavily on a single commodity and its price, diversifying investments is a smart move. Norway realized this and created its government pension fund in 1990. Other governments attempted this as well, but they failed due to corruption. Norway's sovereign wealth fund was designed differently to prevent corruption. The Norwegian government can only spend the profit they expect to generate, so politicians cannot promise to spend more today at the expense of tomorrow. The fund also follows strict investing rules. It cannot invest in oil companies or those that follow unethical practices. Moreover, it cannot invest in Norwegian companies, which may seem odd, but it diversifies risk. The fund provides a safety net to short-term domestic stocks, and if the Norwegian economy were to hit a steep recession, the fund would not suffer because it's not invested in Norwegian companies. The fund is now the world's largest, owning 1.5% of all public companies globally, valued at its peak at $1.35 trillion.
Jeez.
This amount is expected to keep growing, and if distributed, it would be enough to give every Norwegian $250,000. While other Scandinavian countries have had to reduce social spending, Norway is using the interest of its oil revenue to provide healthcare, education, and a safety net to families facing hard times.
So they don't just automatically have the money, it's just they could. It's just worth enough that they could each have $250,000. I know the Norway prison system is very interesting, a lot different than it is here in the United States. I did a reaction on the Norway prison system. If I can remember to put it up there, I'll put like one of those video card link thingies up top. But yeah, check it out. It's definitely a good system they have there.
Norway still has some of the highest taxes globally, but its people never have to worry about paying medical bills they can't afford. The government pension fund is a great example of how a country can use its natural resources wisely and plan for the future, ensuring that its people benefit from the wealth generated by their natural resources. Norway's success in diversifying its economy is not solely due to luck, but rather careful planning and strategy for the long term.
They're making so much money off oil. Why is the taxes so high? You'd think they'd be able to lower the taxes, but I'm not a economist or like I don't know anything about economics.
Although oil plays a significant role in Norway's economy, the country has also developed other productive industries. However, it's important to note that Norway's economic model may not necessarily be suitable for other countries to replicate. Norway's high cost of living and reliance on the public sector have reduced competition and potential growth. Additionally, not every country
That looked like a model. Is that a model? No, is that really? Hold on.
Suitable for other countries to replicate. Norway's high cost of living and reliance on the public sector.
Wow, that's actually real. There's people moving around and everything. Wow, that looks like a model. That's insane.
Have reduced competition and potential growth. Additionally, not every country is fortunate enough to have trillions of dollars in oil reserves off their coast. Other oil-rich nations must establish strong democratic institutions in productive industries, along with a robust educational system, to fully realize the potential benefits of their oil revenue. Without these foundations in place, politicians and strongmen may be tempted to seek short-term gains at the expense of their country's future. While many nations have squandered their oil wealth, Norway has wisely invested its money and now lives off the interest. This success story shows that with careful planning and management, even countries with significant natural resources can build a sustainable and prosperous future.
Yeah, that's crazy. So the tax thing, guys, let me know what you think about that. Why is the taxes so high? If they got all that money, couldn't they lower the taxes and just use the oil reserve money, interest and stuff like that to pay for the healthcare? I don't know. I'm not an economist. Maybe somebody that's watching this is. I don't know. But anyways, do me a favor, hit like on this video, drop a comment, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Have a super fun, awesome day, and I'll catch you in the next one. All right, take care.